Welcome to the podcast, Creating Value in Travel and Transportation, hosted by Landry Holy, CEO and founder of Fairval. In this podcast channel, we will exchange with entrepreneurs, industry experts, financial institutions, and investors on how they contribute to creating value in various travel verticals, thanks new innovative tech solutions and financial services. So, if you have an interest in travel retailing, hospitality, urban mobility, maritime, aviation and space tech, then this podcast is for you.
Hello everyone and welcome to this new episode of our podcast Creating Value in Travel and Transportation. Today we have with us Emmanuel Goudard, founder and CEO of DAIA, an early stage travel tech startup providing a data intelligence platform for airport ecosystems. Emmanuel, hello, how are you?
Fine, very happy to be with you today. Thanks to welcome me.
Well, it's a pleasure. So, to start this podcast, Emmanuel, could you tell us a bit more about yourself and your background?
Yeah, of course. In fact, in my past, after some years as an engineer in different companies, I joined Médiamétrie, who were in the media industry. It's globally it's equivalent to Nielsen, and we did the internet and TV audience measurements, and we had very massive data. That is where I learned my experience in big data and cloud architecture. And this is where I met Patrick Wangtrong and Fabien Comte, my two other colleagues and founders of DAIA. At some point, I had the opportunity to join the head of IT in Nice Airport. At this time, the airport industry was growing drastically, and I could discover that an airport is not only a place where you manage flights, passenger, and bags, but it's a full shopping center as well. So here I felt the huge need to extract value from airport data. We had numerous siloed areas, and business teams were struggling to understand the cross-domain. The cross-domain is to be able to mix data from, for example, from the flights and from the retail. And my business analyst spent a lot of time to collect data and put them together, and it was just a waste of time because the experts must not do these IT jobs, and they must focus on the analysis itself. So here I call back my former colleagues, Patrick and Fabien, to join me at Nice Airport, and we'll launch what we call the Nice Airport Data Initiative. And very quickly, the teams were extremely enthusiastic. And after some workshop, we make them understand the data-driven approach and what it could bring them if we use the analytics to optimize the operational side of an airport.
Right.
This is where the very beginning of this feeling that we can do something with airport data. In parallel, I had the chance, the industry is the airport industry is something quite strange because we exchange a lot with what we could call our competitors. I exchange a lot with the other head of IT of other airports. In fact, we are not competitors. We exchange planes and passengers. And so the dialogue is very open with them. And here I discovered that they had the same trouble as us, and they had a huge trouble to extract value from their applications. We couldn't find the proper tool to do it, and it was mainly a sort of do it yourself approach to find the best way to extract this value. So with Patrick and Fabien, we draw to the conclusion that there is an opportunity because first we understand the business needs of the airport teams. we have the contacts in globally in this world, and we had the technical skills to do this data and cloud architectures, and we could find once something very important. We could mix the needs of the airport itself, the flight, the packs, and the bags, with the marketing side, the e-commerce, the retail and the e-commerce, which is the main point, in fact, is to do these cross-domain applications.
Right. So, could you just tell us from a very high level standpoint? So, what is DAIA core value proposition? As I understood that this background, brought you to found DAIA.
Yeah, just before I will just insist on the airport teams. They have impressive capabilities to follow the operational activities with huge flight program. There is passenger flows. There is bag to be checked with massive security constraints. Even when the program is heavily modified, and it is, the team always adapt and react in optimal way to offer the best service. In fact, airports, they are war machine to follow a chaotic program, keeping maximum security. But in fact, they are so focused on operational activities that it's quite difficult for them to take some altitude, I would say, and are aware and try to do a sort of data-driven approach. Few airports try to do that, but it's not very common. And that is where DAIA steps in. And we are convinced that the data analysis can optimize the airport operation. And here we have two main targets: the cross-domain analysis and the prediction. An airport, I would say, it's like a living organism with distinct parts moving separately. But it's important to understand the link between these parts. So DAIA, we develop a data platform that we can collect data from different silos, and we try to put things together and offer, let's say, a comprehensive understanding of everything of the airports. Our target is to easily reveal the correlation between the silos.
Right.
Another important point, the second point, is in fact the air traffic is still growing even after the COVID crisis. But there is a clear showstopper to get bigger airports. We've got multiple examples of that. So airports must be more efficient with their current equipment. This is where we focus our R&D to work on the prediction and to simulate the airport in the future with different scenario to check if any air traffic evolution will our airport be sufficient on the check-in, on the security, on the gate, or other equipment with this different scenario. It's what we call the airport digital twin.
Right. I like you to share your story of how really you were convinced that you needed to found a DAIA, because I think it's quite illustrative.
The origin. Yeah.
So
This is in fact it's where it started. In fact, the idea began to appear. In fact, it was in the middle of the COVID crisis. It was a nightmare for everybody, but for airports, there is no plane in the sky, no passengers, so it's a difficult moment for us. So we had to find drastic cost reduction. And well, just to remind, in fact, in Nice we've got two terminals. The first one, the terminal one, is mainly international flights, and terminal two, all the others. And so the idea was to close terminal one. This is easy to say. And but the trouble is that it was something like in April or May 2020. And the trouble, we knew that in July or August, we would have, I would say, more traffic. How much, we don't know. So the idea was we close Terminal 1 and we put all flights on Terminal 2. And the question is, the Terminal 2, will it be sufficient to work with all these flights? So, we didn't have any proper tool to simulate that. So we struggle, and after some hard and deep work, we draw the conclusion, and we come back to our president and say, okay, president, we can do it. We will put everything on Terminal 2, and it should work. As a scientist, I was quite frustrated from this bet, I would say. It's not a gamble, it's deep work, but it's a very deep work to draw this conclusion. And so, this is the first idea that we wanted to do something to simulate this sort of use case. And so this is globally the main idea of the main origin of DAIA creation. Now our flagship product is clearly an answer to this use case. So this is the airport digital twin to be able to calculate, can we close Terminal 1 and do everything on Terminal 2?
Right. So I can really see, DAIA really a role to actually transform any airport ecosystem with a data-centric approach. So in terms of value creation, as this is the main topic of this podcast, could you just illustrate with more detailed use cases how DAIA could create more value for the airport and its ecosystem, and also eventually for the traveler?
Yes, in fact, we have different directions. If I come back to the cross domain, we know that in fact the flights and the passengers, it continue to grow, but it will not grow. Well, there will be a limit. But what we know that the retail it's something that is growing a lot, even more than the traffic. So it's very important to accompany this growth and so being able to analyze, to have a cross analysis between the retail and the flights, to know who buy what, and to understand and put in evidence this sort of things, so that the business teams are able to find the best way to have more retail revenues. And this is one of our main point on that, is to facilitate and put in evidence these correlations. The second point, I will come back to my digital twin. In fact, it's very difficult when you've got traffic growth. You don't know exactly what will happen in 6 months, 1 year, 2 year. And so, do you know if your security, your check-in or your gate will be sufficient or not? And it will be a very long work to upgrade them. And it's not only long, it's just very costly. So it's important to be able to simulate different scenario of of different flight program with different load factors, and simulate if the scenario are true. It's necessary to work to buy one security, one check-in, one gates, but it's important to simulate a lot of things before investing. So this is, it's the second value creation that we are focusing. One last example is the parking. Until now, the parking is something parking revenue is something very important in the airport. We see that as a passenger. But very often it's just a revenue that you cannot correlate or reconcile with flights. It's just a revenue. Okay, we want 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, but who bring us this revenue? And it's extremely difficult. As a former, I would say, airport stakeholder, we didn't have so much idea on that. So we are focusing, and we've got a lot of R&D to be able to reconcile parking and flight informations.
Right. So forgive my being a bit provocative. I've worked
Yeah.
myself in airport projects, airport IT, due to my background, and I would say that data intelligence solution have been out there for some time. And um, how do you differentiate versus what we see or used to see through DAIA?
Yeah. Of course, there are some other products, that's some other competitors, and but we are quite. Uh, I would say we trust ourselves because well, we had the chance to work in the airport industry in the middle of airports, and so we have quite well understood the needs of the airport teams, and we have, I would say, the technical knowledge to fulfill the solution, but it's not sufficient, of course. We have so many a lot of contacts, and we've got a partnerships with one with Reza, who is one of the main editors of airport industry, and so we are their data platform, and we are distributed through Reza, and so we benefit their their portfolio, their customer portfolio, and we can be introduced through Reza, which is a very important to be able to appear and to be present with different airports. And last point, which is quite important, is maybe it's our mediametry and I would say marketing side that we are not only focused on the airport itself, the flight packs and bags. We are very focused on the retail and parking, and the idea that we have to cross and to put things together. And I hope this is something that differentiate us.
Yeah, I can really relate to that because it's true that there is a retailing wave on all those infrastructure in transportation. Just to give you some example, in another domain, which is, ground transportation, due to the fact that we have more and more electric cars, people, when they charge on the highway their car, they tend to stay longer in the shops. And so there is a whole retailing strategy that we see in the gas stations and so on to really leverage. And we've seen that in airports, in mega airports, a decade ago, and this is just going more and more in this direction. So I would agree with you that from my own experience, um, we have seen a lot of providers focusing more on the operations of airport in terms of data insight, but less doing the crossover with the marketing, the retailing aspect, which is going to be a growing trend and which there's a huge potential. But having said that, um, how so you mentioned about Treza, which is a main player in France. Um, can you tell us a bit more how you capture data and what type of data you're capturing today through the DAIA platform, and what you plan to capture to make your platform more and more intelligent?
Yeah. In fact, at the very beginning we focus on what we know, which is the European and mainly French airports, and we had the chance that Reza is extremely present in these airports. So we are focused to be able to integrate Reza product, and so we are natively integrated in the Reza portfolio. Uh, of course, it's not sufficient, so we are working a lot with other partners, like the retail in the retail industry or in the parking industry or other, because there is a lot of different applications in the airports, and so we develop a lot of contact with them to be able um, to integrate and to be interfaced with such products. I would say, for example, Scheite Bachmann with parking, or Lagardère retail for retail, and so we are, I would say, ready for any other airport to integrate this data. There's the passenger flow with Wi-Fi and so on, which is important. But here I spoke about RESA, but of course we must be application agnostic, and so we continue the discussion to be able to integrate, I would say, Amadeus, Veovo, or CETA product, so that we are able to be interfaced with their AODB and so on.
Right, very interesting. So I'll ask the famous question à la mode, which is where does AI stands in terms of value creation for your solution, or how will it stand?
This is the magic word and the AI. We work on that, but at first, let us be the foundation must be very solid. And if you want to do AI, at first, you must know what you collect, know the data that you have, know that the data and the needs the need of the airports. And at the very beginning, I would say, let us do analytics. And after, with the airport teams, the AI product open new world. And we are working on that. But we mustn't, I would say, go to the second step before the first. And but of course, when you have to convince, you have to open and to propose what the AI could propose. Here I will take again my example of the digital twin. Of course, there is the machine learning. You have to learn how the airport works with different airlines, with different destination, with your passengers. So there is machine learning, and after, when you have to build the future, there is some AI. But I don't want to. Well, this is a buzz, and so there is some other. We work on the social media information. In fact, until now, the different airports are always, they are on Twitter, they are on Facebook, they are everywhere. But very often it's only a community manager that is able to collect all the data and react. But there is there is so big volume of data that they cannot have the global picture. And so we believe that it's necessary to help this community manager with sort of, I'd say, we have to tell him globally what happens on the social media. We did that with Twitter, and so we take all the Twitter information from one airport and on a period, and it's what we call the NLP, the natural language processing. It's like I would say it's a chat GPT on the other side, and so we are able to give a global picture of what happens on Twitter in this period. So in March, in Twitter, there is so many people that are positive or negative, and the main subject are this one, and this one is toilet property, or it's Wi-Fi, or it's queuing. And for example, you have to put in relief what are the main and what are the force of the tweet. If you and me, we do a tweet, we do we are not so many followers. If Brad Pitt arrive in Nice or in Paris and they do a tweet, this is a very important. So we have to put in relief the force of the tweet.
All right.
The power of the tweet, for example.
Yeah, and again, I relate to that because I see so many startups that say they have AI, but they don't have the data, which is really sorry to say a bit marketing bullshit. So which is
it will appear. It's important to be able to go after, but at first convince the airport what will happen with their normal data, and after you will create data with data, which is AI.
Definitely. So coming back to the business aspect of DAIA, could you elaborate a bit more? Who are your main target customers? Because when you say airports is a really big thing. So I don't think that all the audience who will listen to this podcast actually understand what is an airport or what is the ecosystem of an airport. And so in such ways, who are your target customers in this ecosystem?
You're right. It's an ecosystem, and I would say, we are learning on that. At the very beginning, our main target is and it's still I would say the middle-sized airports, something like 5 million to 25 million passenger per year. There are globally 80 of these airports in Europe, and it's airports that they are sufficiently big to have needs about to use this data and to value that data, but they are not so big to have dedicated team. So this is our first, I would say, target. If I take bigger airports, Schiphol or Heathrow or Paris, they have huge, they are a dedicated data team. So I wouldn't go there at first. Smaller airports, here they may have not so many needs about data. They just have, well, to work on their planes, and that's sufficient. And you at the very beginning, you spoke about ecosystem, and it's what we realize. It's so airports are not the only target. In fact, all the people around the airports may need this data, and so we may be the sort of I would say the people who can bring them this data with airport suppliers. Well, of course they must agree, but we can be the people who make things together and be able to share data between the different actors.
Right. So one of the thing, so the ecosystem is quite large, but one of the thing that one could argue as well is your market not too niche in a way? And to that extent, I know that you're early stage startup, and I think you're doing the thing in the right order, from really understanding the problem as an expert in your domain and trying to find a solution. But what is your take to the market size, or how do you foresee your overall opportunity as a business?
In fact, it's true that it's a niche, and the airport industry is a niche, and hopefully it is a niche, because a startup must work on niche. If not, when it's too big, there is a bigger company will go. So, in fact, when you're a startup, you need to go to in niche. But even if it's a niche, it's something that will grow drastically in the future years. And I would say that the the air traffic is still growing, but what is growing drastically more, I would say, it's the retail. In fact, we know, and there is a lot of studies that say that globally in airport, the global airport retail, it's something like 30 billions now, and it should triple in 10 years, which is far more than the growth of the traffic itself. So I think it's important to be there in the middle of the airport industry and the travel retail that will grow drastically. So be here at the very beginning, because it will explode. It will grow a lot soon. So it's a big niche.
Yeah, and again, it's true that we come in a startup world, where um, we consider that you have to be on a huge market. But if you're few players on a big niche, and we have very good example of companies who are made a lot of money in this way in travel, I think you could be well off. But as you say, definitely the retailing use case, which is one of your major differentiator, is going to be a very interesting one. especially, sharing that. We see a lot of new companies now, a lot of companies who are considering reopening retail outlets versus spending millions and millions in digital marketing where they haven't seen the ROI. Of course, that depends on the product you're selling, but it's just to say that there is a more, I would say, intelligent way of managing the different channels on how you spend your marketing money. But coming back to your point on the data sharing between airports, again, my previous experience, I was astonished at how the different actors were working in silos because there was some kind of conflict of interest. Giving you an example, as an airport, I should make sure that all the service, the passengers flow goes well, that I allocate the right slots to the airline. But if the airline is late, they have to pay a penalty. But if I'm not doing my operation well,
Well, as well.
I have to pay a penalty. And the airline, in such ways, they don't want the passenger to spend too much time in the retail shop. Otherwise, they might be late to queue up when it's time for boarding. So that there's a first conflict of interest. So overall, it's funny to say that you even have duplication of system on one checkpoint, which is, you're wondering somehow why you are scanning two times the same thing, and it's because the two stakeholders are not sharing the data. So
Yeah.
hearing about DAIA, I would say, how are you going to go about this challenge? Because there's still going to be people who are not going to share the data for those
True.
reasons. What do you think about
In
that?
fact, that's of course it's true. And in fact, better, as a former airport stakeholder, I must admit that I had this, I would say, discussion to share data. But in fact, this behavior is trending to decrease. It's not because we are more data open-minded. It's just because we, as well, all stakeholders, the data that we own are not sufficient, and we need the data from others to finalize our use case. So in this point, we are more open to, okay, you've got data. I'm interested to add your data, but in exchange, I will give you mine. And this is something that is this is appearing more and more. And so people, because of that, are more data open-minded. And for us, this is a global opportunity because, in fact, the airport, the airlines, and all these actors are not dimensioned to share data. In fact, an airport, it's like, for security reason, it's like a castle, and it's extremely difficult for them to be open to share their data to other people. And in fact, we are positioned in fact, to extract data in a secured way from the airports and have a sort of gateway to other with governance, with security. And so we are an actor that is able to do this the man in the middle, to provide this data to others and being this marketplace, in fact. And we are not the only one, but it's something that will appear. And airline and airports themselves are not positioned to share data, well, in their IT infrastructure.
Yeah, that's interesting because in another domain, again, and quite applied in the travel industry, there is, for example, an example of a startup working on data sharing for digital marketing, especially in the fact that these third-party cookies will disappear, and so they get data from the different brands. They secure this, so it's done, fully controlled. So it shows that brands are now, sharing their first-party data so that they can scale up their digital marketing campaigns. Which brings me to the question about scale, because as an investor, I would say, oh my God, DAIA is working in the airport domain. We know that airports, they are so long to make decisions. They have multiple, systems, some coming from the 60s. How in the hell are those guys are going to be able to scale? Am I going to get a X10 or even the next 3 from a DAIA investment?
In fact, here I had the chance to be accompanying with Fabian and Patrick, who are in fact the basic reflex of the DevOps. In fact, the dev team, and they are, I would say, they are not here, so I can say that. In fact, developers, they are lazy people. And why they are lazy? They want to do it just once, and after everything will be automatic. And so we are very focused to do and to build something like an infrastructure, a server, and we build it once automatically, and after the auto build will run. So we've got this culture of what we call the DevOps and the scalable DevOps. And so we have started from scratch and from the beginning to have this reflex and to be able to build and to supervise our server automatically, and so so this is naturally scalable.
Okay, so you've managed the scalability from a product standpoint, which is good. And from what I understood, you also will integrate various actors. You mentioned Reza, but other actors like Sita, Amadeus, other players, so that you can scale. And I'm kind of insisting on that because it's true. I remember I had a team which was working on doing optimizing algorithm for stand gate allocation in the airport, and we had the chance to have a very senior person who worked years and years in the airport domain. And when he came to advise us, he said, guys, in an airport, the most important thing is not to get maybe 1 or 2% better performance in your algorithm, but probably to be able to deploy very quickly your new tech solutions so that it's easy to operate, to deploy. And I think from what you say, I think it really makes sense to look at this deployment aspect from a data centric platform. So having said that, you seem to have a very rich solution already, and I've seen it personally, so I can really say it is really impressive. But could you tell us a bit more about your fundraising strategy? How you plan to to deploy, to execute your roadmap in terms of investment funding?
I would say that we are engineers, so we react like engineers. And so we have, I would say, auto-financed our V1 R&D. And we've got one other vertical where we can, we can have a smaller turnover. But until now, we do not go to a pre-seed or a seed round. It's not the target immediately. We want to have a proof of what our idea is correct, and we've got the market that will confirm our product is viable. And then, and only then, we will be open to sort of other investment strategy that we are quite sure that our product is part of the future for airports. I don't know if our product, but the data platform is something that will appear in the main airports. Let us hope we will be part of it. But at first, we have to find the right metrics, the right products, and then after we will be able to go further and have bigger investments.
So you're piloting already your solution, or you plan to pilot with some couple of airports, I expect then?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. All right. Just looking forward, because we know what is an airport today, but if we link the airport of today and we link the future of air mobility, and what we discussed before, how retailing is moving forward in this domain, what would be the summary of what you foresee in the future, and how DAIA would sit in this environment, in this future airport environment?
Do you mean in the airport, the move of airports, you mean, or?
The evolution of airports. I mean, we talk a lot about the next generation airport, but what is for you the next generation airport or ecosystem, and how do you see DAIA play a role?
I'm not sure I will be the very first philosophical. My vision of airports might be not the very good one, but I think that the airport industry, you will keep the bigger airports like Paris, London, etc. But more and more, you may have smaller airports for very small um, air traffic movements. We speak, we will see the next Olympic Games, the small helicopters, autonomous helicopters. So maybe it's something that will move, and you will see more and more very small airports and very high technical level airports, and this one will need to be I would say everything should be automatic, and so the data will be one of the main points for those airports, and so following this movement is something important for us.
That's I would be in line with that, because um, we see, of course, with the eVTOL, the electric vertical
Yeah,
takeoff landing
yeah,
aircraft. This is going. I
thanks.
mean, we talk about air taxis, but we now see more and more of those who are, in the middle of their certification for commercial operations. So this is not like in 10 years. This is maybe in 3 to 5 years. So this is soon, and they will use more and more the smaller airports. I do agree. We already see that in Norway, which, I mean, they don't have eVTOLs, but there are a lot of
Very
small
small airports.
airports, and the Avinor airports from Norway. They do try to find solution how to automate where there's less people operating. But if you think tomorrow there'll be those air taxis, you can imagine that this is going to be smaller airports will be more and more leverage. If I remember well, I think that less than 400 airports in the US manage 99% of the traffic. And there is around, on top of that, 6,000 airports in the US, small airports, which are underutilized. So if you project yourself with the trillion industry, which is coming with, new air mobility solution, definitely this is going to be key, and I expect that the data insights will be key, with, of course, prediction, everything you could leverage through AI type of technology. Fully agree.
So the niche that we spoke just before is not so small.
Yeah, I was
It will grow.
I was challenging you for, to see where was the appetite, but definitely.
Yeah.
Um, Emmanuel, we're reaching the end of the podcast, and I thought that for a conclusion, if you wanted to, I don't know, outline, any message you wanted to share with us uh, as a conclusion.
Yeah. I would say that, well, transforming airports, that's what we do. In a data-centric view, is something quite tough, but while it's a huge and highly viable domain for a player like DAIA, and it's something very interesting to do. Um, we are we've got the passion to accompany our customers. It's a huge world. Again, the airport is a shopping center, so it's a huge world. And so we would love to come back in a few months or years to share our achievement with you as soon as possible.
Well, that would be a pleasure. And again, we love having, talking to early stage startup and see them grow over time. So I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to have another podcast, and you will tell us more about the problem, how you're going to manage all the different customers you need to deliver, which is another, issue for startup is scaling up. So again, thank you so much for your time, Manuel. It's been a pleasure to have you on this podcast. And talk to you later. And thank you for everyone who joined this podcast. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching or listening to the podcast, Creating Value in Travel and Transportation, from Fairval. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to it. We welcome your support, feedback, and suggestions, and we hope to see you at the next podcast. Fairval, creating value in travel and transportation.